Hi everyone, I'd like to give a warm welcome to all of you out there. As you know, my name is Renee and I'm thankful that you've come to learn more about your health. Believe it or not, God really does care about your health, and so do I. That's why I do these videos. Last year, well, I shouldn't say last year, it'd be in 2024, everywhere you look, sickness and disease were on the rise. I guess in 2025 as well, but in 2024 in the United States there was about 29.7 million Americans who were diagnosed with diabetes according to the CDC. And in 2024 the U.S. expected to have 2,041,910 new cancer cases and 618,120 cancer deaths. I can't get the exact figures yet because it's just still too close to be in 2025. But, so I'm going on 2024. Also, we had a rise in the number of strokes per year. We had gastrointestinal problems, arthritic conditions, lung conditions, lupus, multiple sclerosis, and a host of many other diseases. The question is why? Well, many people want to blame God, but that's not the case, because in the Bible, in 3 John verse 2, we're told God wants us to prosper and to be in health. So if he wants us to be in health and disease is more rampant now than ever before, what's the problem? Well, we have laws known as natural laws, and when we neglect these laws in any way, the result is going to be sickness, disease, and sometimes death. Last time I talked about caffeine, and this time I'm going to be talking to you about what the Bible and the Spirit of Prophecy has to say about our doctors / physicians. So LLM 72A.5 says the world has departed far from true principles of restoration and health. And if there was in the land one physician in the place of thousands, this is 2SM now, sorry, 450, paragraph 2, a vast amount of premature mortality would be prevented. Multitudes of physicians and multitudes of drugs have cursed inhabitants of the earth and have carried thousands and tens of thousands to untimely graves. Now, we are told that a physician is expected to know how to recover the health of people. You know, they need to know these things. And in the Bible, in Jeremiah 8:22, it says, "Is there no balm in Gilead? Is there no physician there? Why then is not the health of the daughter of my people recovered?" A true physician gets to the root of the medical condition without masking it with drugs. And then the person can be healed. And number 2, many physicians are of no value. In the Bible, in Job 13, verse 4, it says, "But ye are forgers of lies. Ye are all physicians of no value." And then SpM 137, paragraph 1 says, "Many physicians in our world are of no benefit to the human family." Number 3, we should run to God and not to the physicians when we first get sick. Remember the story of Asa. And the Bible in 2 Chronicles 16:12 and 2 Kings 20:1-7. And Asa in the 39th year of his reign was diseased in his feet until his disease was exceeding great. Yet in his disease he sought not the Lord, but went to the physicians. And then Mark 5:26 says, "Had suffered many things of many physicians." Many people suffer many things by going to the physician instead of getting help. Review and Herald, August 15, 1899, paragraph 7 says, "Physicians, by administering their drug poisons, have done very much to increase the deterioration of the race, physically, mentally, and morally." And then Mark 5:26 again says, "Many physicians was nothing bettered." And then most people go to a physician, and they go to many physicians seeking for help when they have problems that can't be solved. They go to this physician and then that physician and this, physician, but they still have no recovery. In fact, I know someone like that. I've known several people like that. And number 6, most people spend all their money on seeing physicians, but still no recovery. And Luke 8:43 talks about that had spent all her living upon physicians, so all her money, neither could be healed by any. Now, Spirit of Prophecy, pH 144, 13.2, written August 26, 1898, she says, to educate the human family that the doctor alone knows all the ills of infants and persons of every age is false teaching. 2SM 279 says there are simple herbs and roots that every family may use for themselves and need not call in a physician any sooner than they would call a lawyer. When is the last time you needed a lawyer? I know I haven't needed a lawyer for many, many years. So we don't need them very often, so that's how often we need a physician. Second selected message is 294, says if every family were educated in how to use these herbs in case of sickness, much suffering might be prevented and no doctor need be called. SpM 137 paragraph 2 says true education will lead us to teach the sick that they need not call in a doctor or anymore. True education will lead us to teach the sick that they need not call in a doctor any more than they would call in a lawyer. They can themselves administer the simple herbs if necessary. So sorry about that interruption. Alexa was talking to me. Anyway, PH 049 6.4 says he would have us understand that it's a mistake to regard as most essential the education given by physicians who reject the authority of Christ. We are not to accept and follow the view of men who refuse to recognize God as their teacher, but who learn of men and are guided by man-made laws and restrictions. And then CTBH 113 paragraph 1 says, it is not safe to trust to physicians who have not the fear of God before them. The physician may claim to possess great wisdom and marvelous skill, while at the same time his practice contrary to the laws of health. The teaching of these physicians is continual leading away from the principles God has given us in regard to health. Brethren, how can the Lord let his blessing rest upon us when we're going right upon the enemy's ground? Also, read Psalms 1:1. And then CTBH again, 115, paragraph 3 says, angels of God will preserve his people while they walk in the path of duty. But there is no assurance of such protection for those who deliberately venture upon Satan's ground. Wow, that's a good one. Now, MS 115, 1902, and 5 BC 1102.7 says, Christ will not save from wounds the one who places himself unbidden on the enemy's ground. Then comes suffering. Many parents are having their children taken away or being reported to children's services because they let their doctors know that they don't vaccinate their children, or that they only eat 2 meals a day, or that they're 100% plant-based, etc. So parents are scared into going against their choices and are being led to go contrary to the laws of health in many aspects. And that's just wrong. Now, second selected messages again, page 289, paragraph 4 says, your question is, in urgent cases should we call in a worldly physician? Because the sanitarium doctors are also busy, they don't have time to devote to outside practice. If the physicians are so busy they cannot treat the sick outside of the institution, would it not be wiser for all to educate themselves in the use of simple remedies than to venture to use drugs that are given a long name and hides their real qualities? Another quote, PC 48:4 says, appealing to worldly physicians is dishonoring to God. Those who come to God in faith must cooperate with him in accepting and using his heaven-sent remedies, water, sunlight, fresh air, plenty of air, etc. We know those common 8 laws of health. CT 255 paragraph 4 says their people are now being tested as to whether they will obtain their wisdom from the greatest teacher the world ever knew, or seek to the God of Ekron. Let us determine that we will not be tied by so much as a thread to the educational policies of those who do not discern the voice of God and who will not hearken to his commandments. CH 454 paragraph 4 says, I have heard a mother pleading with an infidel physician to save the life of her child. But when I entreated her to seek help from the great physician who is able to save to the uttermost all who come to him in faith, she turned away with impatience. How very sad. Then another quote, Adventist Home 87 paragraph 3 says, it is the right of every daughter of Eve to have a thorough knowledge of household duties, to receive training in every department of domestic labor. It is her right to understand the mechanism of the human body and the principles of hygiene, the matters of diet and dress, labor, and recreation, and countless others that intimately concern the well-being of her household. It is her right to obtain such a knowledge of the best methods of treating disease that she can care for her children in sickness instead of leaving her precious treasures in the hands of strange nurses and physicians. 3T78 says, while you fear to trust yourself in the hands of the physicians and think that you understand your case better than they do, you cannot be benefited but only harmed by their treatment of your case. Unless physicians can obtain the confidence of their patients, they can never help them. If you prescribe for yourself and think you know what treatment you should have better than the physicians do, you cannot be benefited. You must yield your will and ideas and not rein yourself up to resist the judgment and advice in your case. So we can go to the doctor to be diagnosed. And in a sense, we can even be our own physicians. Listen to this quote. This is SW, January 23, 1902, paragraph 17. Again, there may be somebody sick there. You want to know how to use the common methods, the simple remedies of water. It is a simple power. Although my husband and I were not physicians, yet we were. We could go around when the doctor's children were cut down 4 and 5 in the families of physicians, and we never lost a case. That is in diphtheria, and we used only simple treatments. In doing this, we gained the confidence of the physicians, and when persons would go to the physicians for help, they would say, if anybody can help you, it is up there at Elder White's. He and his wife go around and help people. I don't know how they do it. Wow, isn't that something? That's fascinating. Another quote, 14 MR 339, paragraph 1, for her cough, eucalyptus and honey. If you will use this prescription, you may be your own physician. Another quote, Child Guidance on page 397, paragraph 1 says, by practicing temperance in eating, in drinking, in dressing, in labor, and in all things, we can do for ourselves what no physician can do for us. And then 2SM 442 says, intelligent men and women can be their own physicians. And then also Counsels on Diet and Foods, page 124, paragraph 1 says, there is no treatment which can relieve you of your present difficulties while you eat and drink as you do. You can do that for yourselves, which the most experienced physician can never do. Regulate your diet. That is very important. Sister White talks about that in other places as well. 2SM 450 says, if there was in the land one physician in the place of thousands, a vast amount of premature mortality would be prevented. Multitudes of physicians and multitudes of drugs have cursed the inhabitants of the earth and have carried thousands and tens of thousands to untimely graves. CTBH 112 paragraph 3 says, many are unwilling to put forth the needed effort to obtain the knowledge of the laws of life and the simple means to be employed for the restoration of health. They do not place themselves in right relation to life. When sickness is a result of their transgression of natural law, they do not seek to correct their errors and then ask the blessing of God, but they resort to the physicians. If they recover health, they give to drugs and doctors all the honor. They are ever ready to idolize human power and wisdom, seeming to know no other God than the creature, dust and ashes. How sad. Give the credit to God where it belongs, brothers and sisters, whenever you are healed from anything, because it's not the drugs, it's not the herbs, it's not the natural remedies. It is God who does all healing, period. And then the sick, the bereaved, the curious are communicating with evil spirits. All who venture here are on dangerous ground. The word of truth declares how God regards them. In ancient times he pronounced judgments upon one who sent for counsel to a heathen oracle. Is it not because there is not a God in Israel that thou sendest to inquire of Beelzebub, the god of Ekron? Therefore thou shalt not come down from that bed on which thou art gone up, but shalt surely die. 3SP 426, paragraph 3. MM 61, paragraph 5 says, our people are now being tested as to whether they will obtain their wisdom from the greatest teacher the world ever knew, or seek the God of Ekron. Let us determine that we will not be tied by so much as a thread to the educational policies of those who do not discern the voice of God and who will not hearken to his commandments. Okay, read also CTBH 113 to 114. Who among us are seeking help from the gods of Ekron? Look on this picture, a picture not drawn from imagination. In how many, even among Seventh-day Adventists, may its leading characteristics be seen? An invalid, apparently very conscientious yet bigoted and self-sufficient, freely avows his contempt for the laws of life and health, which divine mercy has led us as a people to accept. His food must be prepared in a manner to satisfy his morbid cravings. Rather than sit at a table where wholesome food is provided, he will patronize restaurants because he can there indulge appetite without restraint. A fluent advocate of temperance, he disregards its foundation principles. He wants relief but refuses to obtain it at the price of self-denial. That man is worshiping at the shrine of perverted appetite. He is an idolater. The powers which sanctified and ennobled might be employed to honor God are weakened and rendered of little service. An irritable temper, a confused brain, and unstrung nerves are among the results of his disregard of nature's laws. He is inefficient and unreliable. Whoever has the courage and honesty to warn him of danger thereby incurs his displeasure. The slightest remonstrance or opposition is sufficient to rouse his combative spirit. But now an opportunity is present to seek help from the one whose power comes through the medium of witchcraft. To this source he applies with eagerness, freely expending time and money in the hope of securing the proffered boon. He is deceived, infatuated. The sorcerer's power is made the theme of praise, and others are influenced to seek his aid. Thus, the God of Israel is dishonored while Satan's power is revered and exalted. In the name of Christ, I would address his professed followers. Abide in the faith which you have received from the beginning. Shun profane and vain babbling. 2 Timothy 2:16. Instead of putting your trust in witchcraft, have faith in the living God. Cursed is the path that leads to Endor or to Ekron. The feet will stumble and fall that venture upon this forbidden ground. There is a God in Israel with whom is deliverance for all who are oppressed. Righteousness is the foundation of his throne. 2 MR 373 says, when the great question of health reform was opened before me, the methods of treating the sick were plainly revealed to me. The old school cruel practice and the sure results where one claimed to be benefited, thousands were made lifelong invalids who, had they never seen a physician, would have recovered of themselves without implanting in their system diseases of a most distressing character. And there's a link you can go to read about executive orders of gun safety signed by the president. I don't remember why I put that in there, but anyway, never mind that part. I think I got something mixed up, but anyway, well, no, I know why now, because some of these orders give controls to doctors, allowing them to ask their patients if they own a gun, and it has something to do with mental screening. So the reason I brought that up, because in 8T 27:4 says the world is a theater, the actors, its inhabitants are preparing to act their part in the last great drama. God is permitting the elements of confusion and disorder to bear sway for a season. A power from beneath is working to bring about the last great scenes in the drama. Satan coming as Christ and working with all deceivableness of unrighteousness and those who are binding themselves together in secret societies. Those who are yielding to the passion for confederation are working out the plans of the enemy. 16 MR 289 says the medical fraternity represented to me is Freemasonry, with their long unintelligible names which common people cannot understand, will call the Lord's prescription for Hezekiah quackery. 3T 561, God has permitted the light of health reform to shine upon us in these last days, that by walking in the light we may escape many dangers to which we will be exposed. And then CH 506 paragraph 1 says if religious aggression subverts the liberties of our nation, those who would stand for freedom of conscience will be placed in unfavorable positions. For their own sake, they should, while they have opportunity, become intelligent in regard to disease, its causes, prevention, and cure. Matthew 10:16 says, I send ye forth as sheep in the midst of wolves, therefore be ye wise as serpents and harmless as doves. So a few more quotes about doctors. Drug medication must be left out of the question if the human physician would receive the diploma written and issued in heaven. There are many physicians who will never receive this diploma unless they learn in the school of the great physician. This means they must unlearn and cast away the supposed wonderful knowledge of how to treat disease with poisonous drugs. They must go to God's laboratory of nature and there learn the simplest methods of using the remedies which the Lord had furnished. When God's remedies, sunshine, pure air, water, and good food are used, there will be far fewer deaths and a far greater number of cures. 16 manuscript release, 247 paragraph 1. 17 manuscript release, page 91 says the education and drug medication have brought forth a class of practitioners who need to unlearn much they have learned. They need to obtain an altogether different experience before they can say in word and deed, we are medical missionaries. Till they obtain such an experience, the great physician does not acknowledge them as medical missionaries. MH 127 says, let physicians teach the people that restorative power is not in drugs, but in nature. And one more quote, CD 290, paragraph 5 through 291, paragraph 1 says, instruction has been given me that physicians who use flesh meat and prescribe it for their patients should not be employed in our institutions because they fail decidedly in educating the patients who discard that which makes them sick. The physician who uses and prescribes meat does not reason from cause to effect, and instead of acting as a restorer, he leads the patient by his own example to indulge perverted appetite. The physicians in our institutions should be reformers in this respect and in every other. Many of the patients are suffering because of errors in diet. They need to be shown a better way. But how can a meat-eating physician do this? By his wrong habits, he trammels his work and cripples his usefulness. Wow, those are some pretty powerful quotes. Anyway, that's my time for today. I hope that what you learned on here was a blessing to you and your family. And if you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and share. And if the Holy Spirit impresses you, please donate to my ministry so I can continue to help others. And until we meet again, may the good Lord bless and keep you. And remember, God loves you and He wants you to be in health. So eat that which is good. God bless you.